don't make them like they used to, do they? But in many cases, we wouldn't even know what we were missing without the efforts of film preservationists and restorers. How has that changed in our digital age, and why is film so fragile in the first place? Well, those are two questions that maybe our next two guests can help us answer.
Well, a week from tomorrow, Wednesday the 15th to be exact, BRIC Flix is hosting an evening on film restoration and preservation. And we want to welcome one of the panelists, Benjamin Crossley-Marra, who's in charge of theatrical and non-theatrical distribution at Janus Films, which has been bringing independent art and foreign films to American audiences since the 50s. Thanks for joining us. And of course, we want to welcome back our good friend, Adam Schartoff, host of the Filmwax Radio podcast and the moderator of next week's event.
Hey, guys.
Hey, good to have you back. That's awesome.
Let's start with the moderator guy.
The moderator guy. Yes. Yeah. What is going on next week here at BRIC Flix at BRIC House?
I have no idea. This is news to me. Well, I was approached by folks here at BRIC to participate in your BRIC Flix series, and I was very excited about it. And when they said, choose a topic that's of interest to you, of course it was going to be on film, but and I was just sort of kicking it around for a little while, and I thought, well, film restoration and preservation has been on my mind for a while, and things keep coming up around the subject. So I just thought, well, let's do something on that, and it's a very visual type of opportunity because
look at archives.
And I think people like the idea of seeing something old and then it like restored and looks great, but how does that happen?
Yeah.
And sort of that's where Ben and the other panelists, who I hope we can talk about, will get to talking about.
So Ben, you guys have been around since the 50s.
Since the 50s, yeah.
Not that you've been working there since the 50s.
I've only been there since the 60s.
I imagine there's an extensive catalog there of some of your films. Is preservation something that's at the front of your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say the films that we restore and the films that we've preserved, either both in-house, the restorations that we've done in-house, and the restorations that have been done out-of-house, or the restorations that have been like with our partners like civic, who's also going to be represented on that panel next week, account for about 90 to 95% of what we put in theaters every year. And then, of course, we also do some new films as well. I know you guys were checking out The Lure backstage, which is at IFC Center right now. But preservation is a big component of what we distribute, the preserved films. And we put them out in theaters. Janus Films does. We're the theatrical component of the company. And over the past few years, now that we've gotten to do a lot more digital restoration, we've been able to fulfill a lot more of what programmers of these theaters want to do. And we've seen a huge uptick in theatrical exhibition, especially in New York City, now that we have a bunch of new theaters that have come to Brooklyn and come to Manhattan, like the Metrograph, like the Alamo Drafthouse, which just opened over there.
Great place.
Yeah, great places to see movies, and they're doing some really innovative things with their environments to also help with that experience.
So the old is now the new.
I want to know for Adam, like how much this affects the film community. Like, is there a sort of running wish list of you saying, man, I wish I could clue people into this thing. I wish someone would touch it and restore it so I can share it.
Well,
larger.
honestly, I mean, thanks to Janus Films and Criterion Collection and all, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I watch and that I love has been restored.
Right.
But, the problem is there's thousands of titles, which I guess we could say are relatively obscure, that are either lost or are in danger of being lost. So, that's kind of where, but I myself need to be educated about a lot of those titles too. Yeah. So for me, a lot of these things have already been restored. We're looking at something right now, in fact, an example of something that was restored.
The thought does occur to me. How expensive is the restoration process? Because you have to think throughout the history of film, there's been amazing films that have been lost to time, but it must take so much money to actually sort of bring these films back to life. How much money does it cost to do that?
It varies.
Who are the key
widely.
holders of that?
It varies widely. It depends, as you said, on the state of the print that it's in, how much it's deteriorated over the years, how much work our restoration team needs to do or another restoration team needs to do. I'll give you an example. Last year we did a trilogy of films called the Apu Trilogy. And all of those elements were scattered all over the world. A lot of them had been burned in a fire. So it took our team years and lots of time to go through and patch those all back together.
From the 8 remaining
From the
versions,
eight
you hobbled
remaining
together
versions,
the
you
best
cobbled together the
scenes.
best, and they were
Really?
in labs that were all over the
Makes
world.
my eyes bleed to
They
do
were
that.
so that restoration took a long time, and then there's other
There has to be
restorations.
also, sorry to interrupt.
No.
There obviously there's a commercial imperative as well.
Right.
In these with these films, and the ones that like Janus will repair, because they want to, obviously also make money back.
But that restoration job that we saw just now with the split screen, that was beautiful, especially for like our discerning eye. Like I watched the Super Bowl halftime show, and I feel like I could tell the difference between the 3 cameras that they use. Like, oh, this is like an HD camera, and this one's a little more fuzzy. So audiences are much more
look at this right here.
discerning
Yeah.
now too.
Yeah.
But the difference is clear. The restoration is beautiful. Like you see the blacks and how crisp it is.
Sure, and all the
Right, they've cleaned up all the dirt and
flashes and
Yeah.
What are we in danger? What are we in peril of losing if, the restoration preservation of these films doesn't, sort of continue full head steam?
Well, if that were to happen, we risk losing, I think, a big part of our cultural heritage. I think movies, especially in the time they were shot, should be preserved and kept and be available to as many people as possible. And I know that's what we try to do at Janus, and that's why we put out so many films, and it's really important to us to put films out into theaters, because not only do these films need to be preserved, they should be seen in the setting that they were meant to be seen in.
Yeah.
This is one of the films I was really proud on that we distributed last year, or I was really proud of that we distributed last year. It's a Polish miniseries shot by Krzysztof Kieslowski. It's 10 hours long.
Yeah.
Back in the I think in the early '80s or something.
Yeah, back in the early or late 80s.
Late '80s. Okay.
But
Don't
this was
correct me.
like,
They don't make movies like they
This
used
was
to.
really influential. I remember David Lynch borrows heavily from some of this imagery too, right? The story.
David Lynch, Quentin Tarantino was a
Yeah.
huge fan of this. Stanley Kubrick wrote a foreword to the screenplay that was published. This series had an impact on a lot of modern directors. And we were able to put it back into theaters in a newly restored version, and we had an excellent turnout for it. And that was really important to us, to be able to do a film like this. It's 10 hours long and still see that kind of response.
Right. Looks beautiful.
Yeah, it was a great restoration.
So what can people expect to experience when they come out to BRIC Flix next week? And that's the 15th.
Yeah, the 15th, which is a week from tomorrow, as you said, on Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, I think, right? Well, they're going to come and they're all going to get tons of free copies. No, I can't say that.
Oh my
I shouldn't
God.
say that. No.
Swag
They'll certainly be in the company of Ben from Janus Films, but we'll also be having from MoMA. Katie Trainer, who is part of the restoration and preservation department at the Museum of Modern Art. I'm very excited to bring her, because these are the go-to. I did invite Martin Scorsese, but Marty hasn't written back.
In the mail.
So it must be
He watches our
lost.
show, so I'm sure he'll
I don't know what's
buzz when this is done.
We're going to leave a seat for Marty, and then we have Simon Lund, who works at Cineric, and Cineric is in actually. Like a lab
Yeah, it's a
where
lab.
they
They
do the
have a
restoration,
scanner. They're great.
the actual nitty-gritty of the work. So we're going to have now, having said that, I hope it doesn't appear that it's over people's heads. We're going to keep it very, very accessible to conversation, and we invite people's questions no matter what they may be, and nobody should be, and keep the conversation very easy to follow. And
Before we get out of here, I know you always hear every year the AFI, or we've added this 100 films and they're going to be in the Library of Congress. So are we at a sort of breaking point now? Are there films that are being lost every year because the Library of Congress doesn't canonize them? Who's responsible for, is it each individual sort of group? I'm a Polish director and I want to make sure all these Polish films are preserved, or all of these films from African American
by
women.
women,
Who are the gatekeepers of preservation?
It all depends. For American films, the studios have done a very good job, generally speaking, of keeping their prints in vaults. When we get out to more foreign territories, like in Russia or in Eastern Europe, it gets a little more dicey. Because you have to go to the original distributors, and sometimes they don't have the prints, sometimes they don't exist anymore, so you have to go back to the producers, sometimes they're dead. So it's a little bit of and that's kind of the fun part about it, it's a little bit of a treasure hunt. to try to find everything to make the restoration as complete as we can do it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for picking through the
Yeah.
the industry throughout the years and coming up with those golden nuggets for
And
time and
bringing us
posterity.
A little heat as well.
Yeah.
Some really good movies, man.
Noon
Just
time.
never seen.
Yeah.